What's up, guys? I'm Nicole Rios, and I've got opinions. Today, I am coming to you because I think that there's only one thing on everybody's mind right now, and that is the 8 p.m. deadline that President Trump has set for coming up with opening the Strait of Hormuz and continuing negotiations with Iran and the Iranian regime. Um, there was an interesting New York Times article out today that is called "How Trump Took the U.S. to War with Iran." It's written by Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman, and it outlines essentially how we got here, who was involved, what people's opinions were in the moment, and it creates a very interesting timeline for how this all played out. And so I just want to kind of like hash it out. I want to talk about Trump's tweet this morning and just kind of some of my reactions, my responses to it. Um, the the interesting thing here is that it outlines this meeting between Netanyahu and Trump and some of the head advisors in the Situation Room, which is not normally where we would host heads of state. And so this initial meeting happens on February 11th, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is there, and the Susie Wiles, Rubio, Hegseth, General Kane, John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, Kushner, and Witkoff are the only people in the room aside from Netanyahu. Netanyahu is set up on one side of the table with screens behind him, and they video in David Barnea, the director of Mossad, and other military officials from Israel. And during this meeting, Netanyahu pitches Trump regime change, the idea of going in and ending their ballistic missile program, etc. Um, this initial intelligence that they present says that the Strait of Hormuz isn't going to be a problem, and that the likelihood of them acting on Hormuz or acting out in retaliation for any potential strike that we would put out was minimal, and that the risks of inaction were greater than the risks of action. Now, then behind him, they put on this video montage of potential alternate leaders that could step in and run Iran. And to, Trump's media savvy eye, this creates an illusion of easy peasy, just like that. Okay. Now, the next day, he has, our intelligence community assess what Israel has presented to him. And they broke Israel Netanyahu's plan down into four main parts. The first was killing the Ayatollah, decapitating the regime. The second was crippling their ability to project power, so the ballistics, the drones, their military capability. And then the third was an uprising within Iran and regime change as a fourth. Now, our intelligence community came back and said, listen, one and two are probable. We can take action on that. Three and four, highly unlikely, are going to happen. And General Kane is quoted as saying that it was typical MO for the Israelis to come in and hard sell an underdeveloped plan, and that we would need to plan accordingly and mitigate some of our responses in order to be effective with the outcomes. I think that at that point, Trump decided that regime change was not part of our responsibilities and that it was part of somebody else's problem, whether that be Israel's or that be the Iranian regime or the Iranian people. I'm sorry. Now, Then by the end of February, intelligence said that Khomeini was going to be meeting above ground with other officials, and that this was going to be a likely time that we could go in and cut the head off the snake. And by February 26th, there was a final meeting in the Situation Room where they talked about what the plans would be and what the courses of action would be. And then on February 27th, Trump decided to take action. He decided it was a go. Um, some of the big, I think, red flags that were brought up here are that they didn't perceive that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be a huge problem. And when I look at how this is all playing out politically, low gas prices were the one thing that Republicans had going for them. When it came to affordability, the economy, the domestic issues that we've all been talking about, that kind of won him the election in the first place. And that was his one gold star that he could walk away and say, check, I did that. That was completed. And know that there was there was two places of reporting that I saw that Hegseth didn't think that the Strait was going to be a problem, and now this comes in and says, okay, well, it doesn't seem like Trump thought it was going to be a problem either. And this is based on the fact that after Fordo was bombed last June, the response that Iran had was very limited. They, did the equivalent of like firing off firecrackers with a heads up that it was coming. And so they perceived that whatever response that Iran was going to have, it was going to be in line with that prior response. Now, let me just argue that taking out one singular military facility is not the same thing as taking out the regime's leader. To perceive that the responses from those two things are not going to be different is crazy to me. Now, additionally, I know for a fact that we have had years and years and years of military plans for the Strait of Hormuz. It is not something that we have not planned for or thought about. However, what is becoming more clear is that we were not prepared to execute on one of those plans, which is why we see more and more assets being sent over for potential action. And I would also argue that knowing Trump's personality and knowing that the economy and knowing that gas prices were his main achievement and accomplishment so far in this term, for those to now come bite him in the ass for his failure to prepare for them to control the strait or to threaten the strait, threaten traffic through the strait, to cause chaos in the strait, whatever you want to call it, is directly impeding his ability to call gas prices and all of the pricing in general, food, everything else that this is going to have second and third order effects on. It is making him angry. And I think that you can see that in the way that he's responding to the firings of Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem. All of these things have happened as he's realized that he's shot himself in the foot, that he's taken away his one major win. Okay. And again, I think that what you have to remember about people who like power, who have big egos, is they're not likely to admit they've done wrong. Okay, we can like that or not, but this is where we're talking about the psychological background that Trump is coming from. Okay, he is going to respond in anger because he got duped. Okay, Netanyahu came in with a fancy presentation, a multimedia presentation. Trump was already all lost in the sauce about how effective we were in Venezuela, and he got sold a bag of goods, despite these officials on our side telling him, hey, half the plan they even pitched was baloney. Like it's not going to be a thing. And he says at that point, yeah, well, that can be their problem. However, it's everybody's problem. There's no delineation of who's impacted by the strait and who isn't, because we all are going to be. Now, it's one of those things with war that the longer it goes on, the less support there will be for it. And as a child of 9/11, as a wife of a soldier who was in GWA, I can tell you that I'm getting a little impatient. I can tell you that I was a staunch supporter at the beginning, and now I'm starting to feel like, uh, what are we doing here? What is the end goal? Because the reality is that if you told me from the beginning that depleting their missiles was the end game, I'm here for it. We can do that from the air. Okay, we've been doing that the whole time. We're really getting those targets, and I'm happy, but there's still a lot, and they're still firing them, and they're getting more effective at hitting us, at coming back at us, which as their regime is supposed to be getting more depleted, which tells me they've got a buddy in their back pocket. I don't know if Putin is sending over his footmen to come and help them teach them how to aim and teach them how to use these weapons more efficiently and effectively, but something has happened here. There's been a little bit of a turn. And I don't know whether it's we're putting more power, we're taking more risks, we have more assets in the area to hit. Okay, I understand there can be a lot of causes for this, and I still think we whoop ass. Okay, the fact that we were able to rescue these people over the weekend, the pilots that went down in the F-15, the fact that we were able to get both of them back is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle, and it only gives respect and honor and credence to the might of our military. But that is not an ending. That doesn't come with no risk. Okay? There is great risk to treasure and people and life on both sides. And now we wake up this morning to the end of a deadline, the end of a thirdly extended deadline, where we're supposed to have the strait open and we're supposed to be coming up with a way out of this. And and Trump comes out and says via tweet, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. What the hell are we talking about here? What the actual hell are we talking about here? Because that wasn't part of the plan. And you don't get to go running your mouth like this, threatening a whole civilization of people because you made a mistake and you don't want to take heat for it. Okay? That's your fault. The Strait of Hormuz is closed because you didn't perceive it was going to be a problem to open. You didn't think they were going to respond to close the strait. Okay? We could all say, yeah, and now we're going to we're figuring out a way to get it open. Not I'm going to bully everybody else in the area until they do what I want because I made you know, a fast decision and I didn't perceive this was going to be an outcome. That sounds like a you problem, bro. Not a we're gonna cancel Iran problem. And now what happens is that if you do it, we have a huge mess. If you don't do it, now you have no teeth left. Now any threat that you make is gonna be like, haha, yeah, sure, buddy. If you extend the deadline for what? We've been trying to negotiate with these people for years. There's no negotiating with these people. We know that. And now you've made a hard pressed deadline with such a level of consequence that there's no backing down. I'm really disappointed. I am really um going to be interested to see what happens tonight. I'm sure a lot of us are on edge to see how this goes down. I mean, he continues, I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radical minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary can happen. And who knows? Okay, so what are we talking about? Is that a call to the people to stand up? Like, now's your chance? Maybe, but they haven't yet. Apparently, we tried to arm the Kurds, and that was a mess, which we knew was, and that was part of Israel's plan in the first place. So now again, you've got this bill of goods sold by Israel, and I am not anti-Semitic, and I am not an Israel hater, but guess what? Bibi is no different than Trump. He's the same archetype as Trump. Okay, so you have to take that into mind when you're thinking about this. He comes in knowing who Trump is, develops a whole multimedia presentation for the media guy, okay? And pitches him this thing that he knows he supports anyway. Trump has been talking for years about the problem of Iran. He knows for a fact. So he's going to show him all his Mossad prowess and show him all the intelligence that they have and show him all the options. Oh, there's 10 options of guys that could step in. Listen, it's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. And then our analysts come back and say, yeah, it was kind of a pipe dream. And somebody and Rubio says, wait, so that whole thing is bullshit. And they're like, yeah, that's bullshit. And so Rubio says, okay, so in that case, let's not go in if the reason is regime change. Let's not go in if our purpose is to take over the country. If our purpose is to go make sure they don't have these ballistic missiles to cover their nuclear program, all right, that seems like an actionable goal. And I agree. I agree 100% with Rubio because guess what we can do from the air? We can drop bombs on their missile facilities. And that's what we should continue to do. But the second that we threaten more than that, and the second that we start to threaten the civilian infrastructure, and now power plants and bridges day, and we have people like just callously talking about destroying a freaking nation. And now the regime is out here doing what we know they do, putting human chains of women and children to surround these assets, to surround their power plants, and to surround the desalination plants. And I don't know if they're going to put them under bridges or what, but geez Louise, I wouldn't put it past them. And now we have this decision to make to follow through on on bombing these places when there's people involved now. Like many people intentionally, we would have to come out saying, yes, we knew there was civilians surrounding that place and we bombed it anyway. Like this is our only way out is to say we're not going to bomb places that have people surrounding them. But then what's IRGC going to do? Just put people around everywhere and kill them if they say no. Why did we get backed into this corner? The irony of it being 47 years of Iran and Trump being the 47th president. In numerology, when you have a double number, you add it together. And 4 and 7 is 11. 11 is actually a master number. And so I am trying to not put my tinfoil hat on here because some of you know me to be a little conspiracy minded. So I'm going to share with you my conspiracy. This first meeting with Netanyahu happened in February 11th. We analyzed it February 12th. Came back with, okay, half this plan is actionable. Then by the end of February, all of a sudden this intelligence comes in that Ayatollah Khamenei and all his head leadership are going to meet all together in person above ground. Why? Okay, that's reasonable. Not. And I honestly would not put it past Mossad to orchestrate this above ground meeting with everybody in order to pitch it as a reason to make it this happen. Okay? They needed there was some level of pressure that needed to be realized to make Trump act. Because within days of that information happening, that was a trigger. That's what caused this to all go down. And on February 26th, they had the final situation room meeting with all the cabinet. Well, not all the cabinet because secretary, right? Energy secretary wasn't involved and Bissett wasn't involved, Treasury. So we really didn't think that the Strait of Hormuz was honestly going to be a problem because we didn't even include the two people that would have helped us with the finances or the energy policy. We weren't stockpiling, filling up our reserves. We weren't doing anything to prevent this catastrophe for our energy and our fiscal situation. Okay? And then the next day is when Trump had a deadline. The next day, he said, let's do it. He was briefed on the fact we had a depleted stockpile of missile interceptors with no real path to replenishment. And clearly, they didn't think they were going to need them. They didn't think that was going to be a problem. And now all we see is Trump being pissy. He's in a bad mood. He's having a tantrum. He's firing people. He's taking out his anger with himself on others. And now we're against this deadline. And what now? We're going to be a tiger with no teeth? Or we're going to follow through and potentially harm millions of citizens and the future of Iran and the Persian people? I feel like mistakes were made. I feel like we got sold a bill of goods and people knew Trump's weaknesses and they used him for them. I feel like a lot of Trump voters and Trump supporters are feeling a little burned at the moment. And if we don't figure out a way, listen, Trump is not going to give up his perception of power. This is my main issue. This is not going to be one of the situations he tacos out on. He's not going to taco out on the Iranian people. We're not dumb enough to think that there's somehow going to become a diplomatic solution in the next 24 hours. They're going to surround everything that they don't want bombed with humans. And we're not going to bomb humans. God help us. God help us. Lord Jesus, I pray in this moment that you go to Trump and you give him divine intercession. Give him wisdom beyond his own mind, Lord, that he will find a way out of this, God, because he cannot hurt these people, Lord. And I ask that you come over him with grace and the spirit of Jesus. And I ask that you bring peace to this earth in Jesus' name, amen. I'm sorry, guys. That just came over me and it needed to be spoken. Because there is not a world in which I support the killing of innocent people. And the only power greater is Jesus and Lord. I do not want to wake up tomorrow having destroyed Iran. I do not want to wake up tomorrow and be destroyed by Iran. So this is feeling a little like a rock in a hard place. And I really don't know where we go from here. Because they obviously know they have the leverage and we don't. Our leverage is gone. The threat's out there. The consequence has to be acted upon, or else there's no more leverage. And if we just create another extension because, oh, we've had good talks, trying to have an off ramp, listen, No talk is getting anywhere. Again, this is what people need to understand. How long have you been trying to negotiate this? We even offered them free lifetime uranium for the purposes of energy, which they're trying to sell us that they only want the uranium for energy creating purposes. Yeah, baloney. You had free lifetime supply and you said no thanks. So you expose yourself that that's not your real purpose. These people are not Western civilization. They do not have the same respect for life that we do. We are not negotiating with people like us. So to think they're somehow going to have a change of heart because we threatened the people they're already killing in the tens of thousands is just like, psh, that's not motivating for them. That's not going to stop them or move them for a negotiation or get them to concede to anything. The plan that they offered as coming back in negotiation for the 15-point plan we offered them was the two of them, the plans were so far apart. They want to be able to toll people through the strait. They want to confirm ceasefire that nobody else is going to bomb them. Listen, we already saw with Gaza. When it comes to dealing with Israel and a ceasefire, listen, we don't have the reins. And how does Trump save face from being sold this bill of goods for following the Pied Piper down the path and now realizing, oh, when this man's ego got him to this point, and now he's acting out because he realized he ruined his one of his only wins. He's watching his polls drop. Midterms is coming up. Not that I think he honestly cares about that. He cares about his legacy. So how does he save his legacy? How does he go from here? Because if I know one thing, it's I know the behavior of an alcoholic. Okay. And I know Trump doesn't drink, but if you remember that Susie Wiles quote from a couple months back, that he has the personality of one, this is where we're at. They're not going to take responsibility for a mistake. They're not going to say they're wrong. They're going to continue to project power and they're going to act out when they feel cornered. Well, guess what? Trump painted himself into his own little corner and now he's acting out because he realizes there's no door behind him. He can't get out. I think that we are all hoping that we find an off ramp. I think we're all hoping that we find a way out. It is clear that even at this moment, with a way out right now, we're still going to have a long-term impact in gas prices and food prices due to the fertilizer situation. And from what I've read and heard is that it's not going to be this spring crop that's going to be impacted by the fertilizer situation. It's going to be the fall crop. It's going to be the food we're going to rely on through winter, which is not a time we're able to grow food. Okay. So we're going to have a shortage at a time where there's already less. Sounds great. Not to mention that's directly at midterms. It is very hard to continue to support something that doesn't seem to be well assessed. And with the reporting of Susie Wiles telling his aides, Trump's aides, that they need to be more honest with him about how this is going down and how it's being perceived by the public. This man is high on his own supply. And mind you, I love our president. I love our president. But like all of us, he has faults and they're being taken advantage of. And there is nobody around him that seems to be brave enough to be like, sir, this is your blind spot. And this is how this person is capitalizing on your blind spot. At least Rubio says, listen, if regime change is bullshit, let's just stick to what we can actually accomplish. Let's just stick to what we can message properly. And then he's got his director of comms saying, sir, I mean, this is a lot different than what you were saying the whole time. No new wars. And then all of a sudden, new war, unending war, no outcome war, killing a whole civilization war. What? What? Dude, I was with you. I even tolerated the praise be to Allah tweet on Easter because I knew it was a troll. Okay. My chin dropped, I rolled my eyes, and it was a level of shock that it was a lot. But this one this morning, to kick off the day, a whole civilization will die tonight. It's too far, Mr. President. It's so too far. And I know you're upset. And I know that you realize now what has happened and that you got taken. But now is not the time to lose your cool. Now is the time to stand up and be a calm and clear headed leader. It's not about you at this point. It's not about you anymore. Swallow your pride for 5 seconds. You need to do something about Benjamin Netanyahu. You need to do something about him. You need to bar him from the damn White House. You need to only take his calls. You need to realize that despite your past relationship with him, he targeted you and manipulated you. The reality is, Israel wouldn't have been able to do this without our help. He came into that situation room ready to propose a plan that he knew would benefit Israel and on second and third order consequences benefit us. But it was proposed in such a way that made it seem easy and doable. And that first impression made it hard to convince our president otherwise. Especially with coming off the high of Venezuela. And now we realize, well, you can't take out a country's leader without some level of retaliation. Oh, there's a shocker. Especially one that's so ideological. I don't know how you start the tweet with a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. And then you finish the tweet with God bless the great people of Iran. The whiplash. The whiplash I have. I'm not sure what kind of end game I see happening here. I don't think they concede in the next 3 hours to open up the strait. They've got human chains of people wrapped all over the things that we have said we would bomb. so we don't take action on that, and then they realize that they could just wrap human chains of things around everything and the war then stops. Or then ground troops are put in to liberate the people so that we can bomb the things. The logic on this is ended. That's it. We've come to the end of the line. You can't make this level of threat with this level of deadline and then find a way out beyond what's on the paper. And you don't make threats like that to a regime that doesn't care about life. I would have threatened their money. I would have threatened, anything else. Oh boy. And who knows who we're actually negotiating with? Who knows what leadership of Iran we're actually talking to at the moment and whether they actually have some level of power. So that's my spiel. It might be a surprise to those of you who know me as a staunch Trump reporter or supporter, but the reality is like truth is truth. And there are things that are going too far. And there are times we have to admit like mistakes were made, but pivot. Freaking pivot. And I fear that his personality in needing to win and needing not to look bad and needing to save face and needing to show power and needing to prevent the press from completely annihilating him lends more towards him not backing down than doing so. And that is a grave concern for me. So here we are. And I hope that we can wake up tomorrow and not see Iran leveled. So we'll sign off on that. Lord, protect the people of Iran. Give our president wisdom. Give us all peace while we wait. And let us find a way out that we can't see. In Jesus' name, amen.